From the book The Life and Teaching of Leo Tolstoy, a book of extracts, published in 1904, here is one section called Property, Luxury, and the Exploitation of Labor. Slavery has long been abolished. It was abolished as well in Rome as in America, and among ourselves. But the word only has been abolished, and not the evil. Slavery is the violent freeing of some men from the labor necessary for satisfying their wants, which transfers this labor to others. And wherever there is a man who does not work, not because others willingly and lovingly work for him, but because he has the possibility, while not working himself, to make others work for him, there is slavery. Slavery, with its three fundamental modes of operation: personal violence, soldiery, land taxes maintained by soldiery, and direct and indirect taxes put upon all the inhabitants, and so maintained, is still in operation now as it has been before. We do not see it because each of these three forms of slavery has received a new justification which hides its meaning from us. In our time, property is the root of all evil and of the sufferings of men who possess it, or are without it, and of all the remorse of conscience of those who misuse it, and of the danger from the collision between those who have it and those who have it not. Property is the root of all evil, and at the same time, property is that towards which all the activity of our modern society is directed, and that which directs the activity of the world. States and governments intrigue, make wars for the sake of property, for the possession of the banks of the Rhine, of land in Africa, China, the Balkan Peninsula. Bankers, merchants, manufacturers, landowners, labor use cunning torment themselves, torment others for the sake of property. Government functionaries, tradesmen, landlords struggle, deceive, oppress, suffer for the sake of property. Courts of justice and police protect property. Penal servitude, prisons, all the terrors of so-called punishments, all is done for the sake of property. Property is the root of all evil, and now all the world is busy with the distribution and protecting of wealth. On looking at our lives, or at the lives of rich people from without, I saw that all that is considered as the summum bonum of these lives consists in being separated as much as possible from the poor, or is in some way or other connected with this desired separation. In fact, all the aim of our lives, beginning with food, dress, dwelling, cleanliness, and ending with our education, consists in placing a gulf between us and them. And in order to establish this distinction and separation, we spend 9/10 of our wealth in erecting impassable barriers. This applies to all the modes of living expressed by the word cleanliness. Cleanliness! Who does not know human beings, especially women, who make a great virtue of cleanliness? Who does not know the various phases of this cleanliness, which have no limit whatever when it is procured by the labor of others? Who among self-made men has not experienced in his own person with what pains he carefully accustomed himself to this cleanliness, which illustrates the saying, "White hands are fond of another's labor." Today, cleanliness consists in changing one's shirt daily, and tomorrow it will be changed twice a day. At first, one has to wash one's hands and neck every day. Then one will have to wash one's feet every day, and afterwards it will be the whole body and in peculiar ways. A clean tablecloth serves for 2 days, then it's changed every day, and afterwards 2 tablecloths a day are used. Today the footman is required to have clean hands. Tomorrow he must wear gloves, and clean gloves, and he must hand the letters on a clean tray. And there are no limits to this cleanliness, which is of no other use to anyone than to separate us from others, and to make our intercourse with them impossible, while cleanliness is obtained through the labor of others. Who am I that desire to better men's condition? I desire it, and yet I get up at noon after having played at cards in a brilliantly lighted saloon during all the previous night. I, an enfeebled and effeminate man, who thus require the help and services of hundreds of people, I come to help them? These men who rise at 5, sleep on boards, feed upon cabbage and bread, understand how to plow, to reap, to put a handle to an axe, to write, to harness horses, to sow. Men who, by their strength and perseverance and self-restraint, are 100 times stronger than I, who come to help them. I go to help the poor. But of the two, who is the poorer? No one is poorer than myself. I am a weak, good-for-nothing parasite who can only exist in very peculiar conditions, who can live only when thousands of people labor to support this life, which is not useful to anyone. And I, this very caterpillar which eats up the leaves of a tree, wish to help the growth and the health of the tree and to cure it? What then is to be done? Hundreds of times have I spoken with peasants who live in towns, and from my talks with them and from my own observations, it became clear to me that the accumulation of country people in our cities is partly necessary because they could not otherwise earn their livelihood, and partly voluntary because they are attracted by the temptations of a town life. The cause is a simple one, for property passing from the hands of the agriculturalist into those of non-agriculturalists thus accumulates in towns. The wealth of country producers passes into the hands of tradespeople, landowners, government, functionaries, manufacturers. The men who receive this wealth want to enjoy it, and to enjoy it fully they must be in town, in the village, owing to the inhabitants being scattered. It's difficult for the rich to gratify all their desires. Another of the chief pleasures procured by wealth, vanity, the desire to astonish, to make a display before others. This cannot be gratified in the country for the same reason. And luxury in the country is even disagreeable to a man who has a conscience and is an anxiety to a timid person. Therefore, rich people gather together in towns, where the enjoyment of all sorts of luxuries is carefully protected by a numerous police. A countryman often cannot help going to town where a ceaseless round of feasting is going on, where what has been procured from the peasants is being spent. He comes into the town in order to feed upon those crumbs which fall from the tables of the rich, and partly by observing the careless, luxurious, and universally approved mode of living of these men, he begins to desire to order his own affairs in such a manner that he too may be able to work less and avail himself more of the labor of others. And at last he decides to settle down in the neighborhood of the wealthy, trying by every means in his power to get back from them what is necessary for him, and submitting to all the conditions which the rich enforce. These country people assist in gratifying all the fancies of the wealthy. They serve them in public baths, in taverns, as coachmen and as prostitutes. They manufacture carriages, make toys and dresses, and little by little learn from their wealthy neighbors how to live like them, not by real labor, but by all sorts of tricks, squeezing out from others the money they have collected, and so become depraved and are ruined. It is then this same population, depraved by the wealth of towns, which forms that city misery which I wished to relieve, but could not. I found the clerk reading prayers over the dead laundrywoman. The lodgers, starvelings themselves, had contributed money for the prayers, the coffin, and the shroud. All the dead are beautiful, but this one was particularly so. Her face looked weary but kind, and not sad at all, though rather astonished. And indeed, if the living do not see, the dead may well be astonished. On the day I wrote this, there was a great ball in Moscow. On the same night, I left home after 8 o'clock. I live in a locality surrounded by factories, and I left home after the factory whistle had sounded, and when, after a week of incessant work, People were freed for their holiday. Factorymen passed by me, and I by them, all turning their steps to the public houses and inns. Many were already tipsy, many were with women. Every morning at 5 I hear each of the whistles, which means that the labor of women, children, and old people has begun. At 8 o'clock another whistle. This means half an hour's rest. At 12 the third whistle. This means an hour for dinner. At 8 o'clock the fourth whistle, indicating cessation from work. By a strange coincidence, all the 3 factories in my neighborhood produce only the articles necessary for balls. One may, on hearing those whistles, attach to them no other meaning than that of the indication of time. But one may associate with them also the meaning they in reality have. That at the first whistle at 5 o'clock in the morning, men and women who have slept side by side in a damp cellar get up in the dark and hurry away into the noisy building and take their part in a work of which they see neither cessation nor utility for themselves, and work often so in the heat, in suffocating exhalations, with very rare intervals of rest, for 1, 2, or 3, or even 12 or more hours. And so it goes on from one week to another, interrupted only by holidays. I walked on observing these workmen in the streets till 11 o'clock. And now from every side carriages appeared, all going in one direction. On the coach box sat a coachman, sometimes in a sheepskin coat, and a footman, a dandy with a cockade. Well-fed horses, covered with cloth, ran at the rate of 15 miles an hour. In the carriages sat ladies wrapped in shawls and taking great care not to spoil their flowers and their toilets. All beginning with the harness on the horses, carriages, gutta-percha wheels, the cloth of the coachman's coat, down to the stockings, shoes, flowers, velvet, gloves, scents. All these articles have been made by those factorymen, some of whom fell asleep on their own pallets in their mean rooms, some in night houses with prostitutes and others in the police station. But the ball-goers drive past these men, in and with things made by them, and it does not even enter into their minds that there could possibly be any connection between the ball they are going to and these tipsy people to whom their coachmen shout out so angrily. With quite easy minds and assurance that they are doing nothing wrong, they enjoy themselves at the ball. We know that each woman at this ball, whose dress costs 150 rubles, was not born at the ball, but she has lived also in the country. She has seen peasants, knows her own nurse and maid, whose fathers and brothers are poor, for whom earning 150 rubles to build a cottage, which is the aim of a long, laborious life. She knows this. How can she then enjoy herself knowing that on her half-naked body she's wearing the cottage, which is the dream of her housemaid's brother? The work of mowing is one of the most important in the world. If there is more hay, there will be also more meat for old people and milk for children. For each mower, here is decided the question of bread and milk for himself and for his children during the winter. Each of the working people, male and female, knows it. Even the children know that this is an important business, and that one ought to work with all one's strength, carry a jug of kvass for the father to the mowing place, and shifting it from one hand to another, run barefoot as quickly as possible, a distance of perhaps 1.5 miles from the village, in order to be in time for dinner, that father may not grumble. Everyone knows that from the mowing to the harvest, there will be no interruption of labor and no time for rest. And besides mowing, each has some other business to do, to plow up new land and to harrow it. The women have cloth to make, bread to bake, and the washing to do. And the peasants must drive to the mill and to market. They have the official affairs of their community to attend to. They have also to provide the local government officials with means of locomotion, and to pass the night in the fields with the pastured horses. All, old and young and sick, work with all their strength. The peasants work in such a way that when cutting the last rows, the mowers, weak people, growing youths, old men, are so tired that, having rested a little, it's with great pain they begin anew. The women, often with child, work hard too. It's a strained, incessant labor. There is a small company laboring in the hayfield. 3 peasants, one of them an old man, another his nephew who is married, and the third the village bootmaker, a thin, wiry man with their women, including one of about 80, helping. They all draw up in line and work from morning to evening under the burning sun of June. Let us turn to the country house. In the evening, when the rattle of the scythes of the returning toil-worn mowers and the sounds of hammer and anvil are heard, there blend other sounds from the country house. Drin, drin, drin goes the piano. A Hungarian song is heard through the noise of the croquet balls. Before the stable, an open carriage is standing, harnessed with 4 fat horses, which has been hired for 20 shillings to bring some guests a distance of 10 miles. Horses standing by the carriage rattle their little bells. Before them, hay has been thrown, which they are scattering with their hooves, the same hay which the peasants have been gathering with such hard labor. In the yard of this mansion there is movement. A healthy, well-fed fellow in a pink shirt, presented to him for his service as a house porter, is calling the coachman and telling them to harness and saddle some horses. 2 peasants who live here as coachmen come out of their room and go in an easy manner, swinging their arms, to saddle horses for the ladies and gentlemen. Still nearer to the house, the sounds of another piano are heard. It's the music mistress who lives in the family to teach the children, practicing her Schumann. The sounds of one piano jangle with those of another. Quite near the house walk 2 nurses. One is young, another old. They lead and carry children to bed. These children are of the same age as those who ran from the village with jugs. One nurse is English. She cannot speak Russian. She was engaged to come from England, not from being distinguished by some peculiar qualities, but simply because she does not speak Russian. Farther on is another person, a French woman, who is also engaged because she does not know Russian. Farther on, a peasant with 2 women is watering flowers near the house. Another is cleaning a gun for one of the young gentlemen. Here 2 women are carrying a basket with clean linen. They have been washing for all these gentlefolks. In the house, 2 women have scarcely time to wash the plates and dishes after the company, who have just done eating, and 2 peasants in evening clothes are running up and down the stairs serving coffee, tea, wine, seltzer water, etc. Upstairs, a table is spread. A meal has just ended, and another will soon begin, to continue till cock-crow, and often till morning dawns. Some are still sitting, smoking, playing cards. Others are sitting and smoking, engaging in discoursing liberal ideas of reform. And others again walk to and fro, eat, smoke, and not knowing what to do, have made up their mind to take a drive. The household consists of 15 persons, healthy men and women, and 30 persons, healthy working people, male and female, labor for them. And this takes place there, where every hour and each little boy are precious, when the peasants, not having had their sleep out, will mow the oats at night in order that it may not be lost, and the women will get up before dawn in order to finish their threshing in time. There will be private theatricals, picnics, hunting, drinking, eating, piano playing, singing, dancing. In fact, incessant orgies. Yet we wonder at the inhumanity of a heartless Lucullus who gorged himself with fine dishes and delicious wines while people were starving, and we shake our heads over the barbarism and inhumanity of our grandfathers, the serf owners. Men of science are so sure that this culture is the greatest of blessings, that they boldly proclaim the contrary of what the jurist once said. Fiat justitia, periat mundus. They now say, fiat cultura, periat justitia. Electric lights and telephones and exhibitions are excellent, and so are all the pleasure gardens with concerts and performances and all the cigars and matchboxes and braces and motor cars. But may they all go to perdition, and not they alone, but the railways and all the factory-made chintz-stiffs and cloths in the world. If to produce them it is necessary that 99% of the people should remain in slavery and perish by thousands in factories needed for the production of these articles, Truly enlightened people will always agree to go back to riding on horses and using pack horses, or even to tilling the earth with sticks and with their own hands, rather than to travel on railways which regularly every year crush a number of people, as is done in Chicago, merely because the proprietors of the railway find it more profitable to compensate the families of those killed than to build the line so that it should not kill people. The motto for truly enlightened people is not fiat cultura periat justitia, but fiat justitia periat cultura. But true culture needs not be destroyed. The government and the Zemstvos, forsooth, have undertaken to spoon-feed the people. Now, who are they who take upon themselves to perform the task? And who is it that they thus take under their protecting wing? We, the noble-born chinovniks of the Russian Empire, moved by a sentiment of charity and philanthropy, intend to feed our breadwinner, who himself feeds us all. The babe in arms will good-naturedly suckle its nurse. The parasite supply nutrient to the plant on which it lives and flourishes. We, the privileged classes, who fatten on the earnings of the horny-handed people, we who cannot move hand or foot without their aid, turn around and propose to feed them. In the very proposal as it stands, there is something ludicrously strange, inconceivably grotesque. The people are hungry and exhausted, and we, the upper classes, are very much concerned thereat, and would gladly stretch out a helping hand to rescue them. With this object we appoint committees, take an active part in their sittings, collect and subscribe money, purchase corn, and distribute it to the destitute. But why are the people hungry? It is a melancholy but undeniable fact that the entire agricultural population of Russia is systematically drugged with vodka and cruelly sweated by merchants and tradesmen, and all for their own selfish, narrow ends. The result is writ large in the physical degeneration of the people and the alarming death rate of children. Men and women are rendered weak, will-less, shattered invalids, and children are killed off by the thousand in order to enable our capitalists, aristocrats, and merchants to possess themselves of the wherewithal to repose in the lap of luxury, to continue to lead the lives of sybarites in their sumptuous palaces, gorging themselves at Lucaland banquets, drinking the sounds of soft, sweet music at concerts and operas, listening to science distilled into popular lectures, etc. Why deceive ourselves? We want and care for the people only as instruments, as stepping stones to our various schools of the moment. And, much as we desire to lay the flattering unction to our souls that we regard and treat them as members of the same family as ourselves, as men and as brothers, it is a fact that our interests are diametrically opposed to and incompatible with theirs, and that what is meat to us is rank poison and death to them. Some proposed remedies. Economic science is so sure that all the peasants have inevitably to become factory operatives in towns that, though all the sages and the poets of the world have always placed the ideal of human happiness amid conditions of agricultural work, though all the workers whose habits are unperverted have always preferred and still prefer agricultural labor to any other, though factory work is always unhealthy and monotonous, while agriculture is most healthy and varied, while factory work, even if the factory belongs to the workmen, is always enforced independence on the machines. Though factory work is derivative, while agricultural work is fundamental and without it no factory could exist, yet economic science affirms that all the country people not only are not injured by the transition from the country to the town, but themselves desire it and strive towards it. The cause of this evidently unjust assertion is that those who have formulated and who are formulating the laws of science belong to the well-to-do classes and are so accustomed to the conditions advantageous to themselves in which they live that they do not admit the thought that society could exist under other conditions. The socialist ideal is that the workers, having become masters of all the means of production, are to obtain all the comforts and pleasures now possessed by well-to-do people. They will all be well clothed and housed and well nourished, and will all walk on electrically lighted asphalt streets, and frequent concerts and theaters, and read papers and books, and ride on auto cars, etc. But that everybody may have certain things, the production of those things must be apportioned, and consequently, it must be decided how long each workman is to work. How is that to be decided? No statistics can show how much is wanted, and what articles are needed to satisfy the demand in a society where the means of production will belong to the society itself, i.e., where the people will be free. Furthermore, how are people to be induced to work at articles which some consider necessary and others consider unnecessary or even harmful? There will always be people who consider that, besides cannon and scents and whiskey, exhibitions, academies, beer and beef are unnecessary and even harmful. How are these people to be made to participate in the production of such articles? Some people will decide these questions, and others will obey them. Such division of labor as now exists will evidently be impossible in a free society. Looking backward is excellent. One thing is bad, namely the socialist Marxian idea that if one does wrong for a very long time, good will ensue of its own accord. Quote, "Capital is accumulated in the hands of a few. It will end by being held by one. All trades unions will be also united into one. There are capital and labor divided. Authority or revolution will unite them, and all will be well." End quote. The chief point is that nothing in our civilization will diminish, nothing recede. There will be the same mansions, the same gastronomic dinners, sweets, wines, carriages, horses, only everything will be accessible to all. Individual labor is unprofitable. Centralized labor is more profitable, but the inequality and oppression are terrible. Socialists wish to remove inequality and oppression by assigning all capital to the nation, to humanity, so that the centralized unit will become humanity itself. But among men striving each for his own welfare, it would be impossible to find men sufficiently disinterested to manage the capital of humanity without taking advantage of their power. Men who would not again introduce into the world inequality and oppression. But some will say, choose men who are wise and pure. But none but the wise and pure can choose the wise and pure. And if all men were wise and pure, there would be no need of any organization. Consequently, the impossibility of that which the revolutionary socialists profess is felt by all, even by themselves. And that is why it is out of date and has no success. However much advantages may increase, those who are at the top will appropriate them for themselves. Wealth will all go to the men in authority as long as authority exists.